When I think about medicine, I mean, I think about anything that helps the body stay in balance. And medicine that we use, whatever form of medicine it is, ultimately should serve to maintain that balance and to bring the body back to a place of health. Food is an essential medicine because we literally are what we eat. What we eat in our nutrition, in our foods, feed the body. They feed our cells, they feed our organs, our mind, they feed our immune system, they feed our muscles. And so what our food is made of is what makes us what we are. Everything that we are had to come from somewhere else. We started off in our mother, and so what she ate fed her cells and fed us, and fed the cells that we became when we were fetuses and infants. And then once we're out in the world, what we ate then becomes our body. And so if what we're eating is full of nutrients and vitamins and minerals, then that's what our body will be full of. If what we eat is full of trash, if what we eat is full of sugar and chemicals and toxins and Roundup and pesticides and other things like that, then that is what will be in our body. And our bodies know. Our bodies know what is right. Our bodies know what feels right. And our bodies will tell us if what we're eating is not what our bodies need, we will feel it. If we eat too much, or if we have too much of something, our bodies will notice that. And when we have an excess, then we see things like overweight, extra fat on the body, obesity. And in fact, all people who are overweight or obese, they may not in fact be well nourished. You can be malnourished and be overweight. In fact, there's many kids who have that because they're having extra calories, because the foods that they consume are high in calories but not high in nutrition. So it may have lots of sugar, it may have lots of fat, but it may not have the vitamins, the minerals, the proteins that our bodies need to stay healthy and strong. And so at the same time, you can be overweight and you can totally be healthy. You can carry excess weight, but if you're eating nutritious food, then you'll have the vitamins, the nutrients, the proteins, and the other elements that your body needs to be healthy. And so ultimately it's about wellness. It's about feeding the body, giving it the tools that it needs to function the way it's designed to function. When I think about our food as medicine, I actually just return to the concept of balance. And what I really like is thinking about the balanced plate. So if you take your food and it were to live on one plate, half of your plate should be fruits and vegetables. And the reason for that is that vegetables and fruits are one of our superfoods. So they're the best way to get very concentrated forms of vitamins, antioxidants, the sugars that are good for us, and minerals, fiber. They carry so many of the things that are so vital to the proper functionings of our body. So in that balance, half is fruits and vegetables, and a quarter should be our proteins. And our proteins are key because the proteins are the foundation for our body. Our muscles use proteins to be able to work. We use them as a source of fuel, and they're essential to the functioning of our cells and our organs. And the key thing is that those proteins are healthy proteins, lean proteins. The proteins are the building blocks to making any being. And so if you're consuming protein from a being, if that being was healthy, then it'll be healthy for you. And so when we think about eating animals as our protein, the healthier the animal, the healthier it'll be for you. Much of our meat is raised in these mass incarcerations, these mass jails for cows that don't get to live a very beautiful life. And so the cows are unhealthy, which means the meat can be unhealthy. So either we should be eating very you know, happy animals that have been raised in a good way. Or if that's not something we can do, what we do eat, we should limit. And so we should limit our red meat to once or twice a week. And the portion size should be about the size of the palm of your hand in thickness and in size, minus the fingers. A bigger person with a bigger hand is going to eat more protein, and a smaller hand, less protein. Protein also doesn't have to come from animals. Protein can come from plants. You can find it in yogurt, in nuts and seeds, some legumes like, you know, lentils and beans. You know, limit your meat. Eat lean proteins, lean meats like chicken and fish. Fish and seafood is really good protein for us because it also brings really good healthy fats. And then our plant proteins. So that's a quarter of what we eat. And then the other quarter of what we eat is our carbs, but really ideally our grains. And so the grains are the other essential balance to our nutrition, or to what we eat. And it should be that last piece of the plate. And grains are key because they carry more vitamins and nutrients, more fiber. And the vitamins they carry are different from what are carried in vegetables. Grains really are another power food. And a lot of people didn't grow up eating lots of grains. I know I didn't. I mean, we would eat wild rice on Thanksgiving. And every now and then maybe some quinoa. But I didn't eat a lot of grains. We grew up on white rice. And so learning how to bring grains back into your diet can be a really great way to finish that balance and bring in those superfoods. Another way I like to think about our food as medicine is remembering that it should look like food. It should seem like food. If it's coming to you in a plastic package surrounded by more plastic or another box, and you read the ingredients and you can't tell from the ingredients how it was made, and you can't even understand the words in the ingredients, then that's not going to be a food that's designed for your body, right? It's been processed, it has chemicals added to it, and so it's not something that was designed for your body. Food that was designed from our body comes straight from the earth. We are a part of this earth, and the earth feeds us. And so the closer the food is to the earth, the closer it is to being the nutrients that we need. They also serve as preservatives so that food can last forever, that without this added to it, it wouldn't last as long, it would spoil. But we add these and it gives them a shelf life of years. And added salt and added sugar are not good for the body. Food labeling and food marketing is a huge industry. Companies have learned, they literally pay people to learn how human minds work and how to make somebody want your product, like your product, buy your product. And ultimately, they just want to make money. And so they start marketing their foods to us from when we're tiny. Before we can read, they're marketing our foods to us. There's a reason why grocery stores have certain foods at kids level, so that when you're checking out of the grocery store, they're saying, "Mommy, Mommy, can I have that candy bar?" The strategy is very intentional. Now there's more of a trend towards eating healthy, right? Like, keto is big, so things that have protein in them are being marketed. Fiber, everyone knows we're supposed to have fiber, so things that have fiber and whole grains are being marketed. Things can be labeled as natural. If I use a chemical to flavor the food, and I had to go through a whole chemical process to make that chemical, but it was derived from a plant as opposed to synthesized from other artificial things, even if I had to go through all of this stuff to get that, because it came from a plant, I can call it natural flavoring. And so natural does not mean healthy. But what's happened over time is that there's this traditional knowledge and these traditional recipes that have then been overladen by commodity foods, a loss of our hunting, our fishing, our gathering, our environments, a loss of our plants, being assimilated into a different culture and a different diet. We call it the Standard American Diet, which is SAD or SAD. And it's a very sad diet because it's not healthy. And that has become what I mean, for me, right? That I grew up on all this stuff. I was sad as a kid that I didn't get to have, you know, fruit roll-ups and sugary cereals. And now I look back and I'm grateful my dad taught me these things. But it's just everywhere and it's normalized. And so the most empowering thing is being critical and really thinking about, what am I eating? What am I putting in my body? Is this really food, or is it something that, you know, Kellogg's wants me to think is food? Stress can impact every part of the body, including our digestive system, as well as our eating habits. And in fact, when we eat, the body experiences pleasure. And so if we're under stress, food can be used to trigger that pleasure response. And so we might not be hungry, but what might be triggering the thought to eat is, in fact, I'm feeling stressed, I want to feel better, and the body says, I know a way to feel better. When I eat, I experience pleasure. And so stress, we all know this, right? It's a complicated way to say we stress eat. But the point is that there's actually a physiological reason. There's a response, there's a chemical reaction that happens in the brain when we eat, and that itself can be used as a way to deal with stress because it lets your body release that feel-good feeling. And then we're going to seek foods that will trigger that pleasure release, and not necessarily the foods that are going to nourish the body. So we're going to seek that salty, that sweet, that crunchy, that greasy, because all of that is triggering that pleasure release to help deal with stress. And so the key thing is to just realize that when I'm stressed, I deserve to find a way to relieve this stress. And I should make sure that the way I'm relieving this stress will actually be healthy for me and my body and my mind and my spirit, and not actually be something that's going to be harmful in the long run. In Native communities and in other communities that have lived through historical trauma, that have had generation upon generation upon generation of stress, from colonization to wars to you know, intergenerational trauma to, living through a pandemic, right? There's so many layers to the stress that our people have carried. And the stress that someone goes through in the time, it affects their body, it affects their cells. And as a woman, it affects the cells that you carry inside of you that you then pass on to your children. And so if it affects my DNA, that can get passed on to my children and even my children's children's children. Because our people have lived through periods of starvation and neglect, Native people in many communities, in many populations, have learned to adapt to these stressful situations. And the genes have changed in that generation where because they lived through starvation, they became better at storing excess calories and excess fat in order to survive that period of starvation. And then that gets passed on. And then here we are now where many less people are living through periods of starvation. And in fact, we have lots of food. We have too much food. We have food that have too many calories. And so we're good at storing extra fat. Then you give us food that has too many calories, so we have to store it anyways. And that's why you see higher rates of overweight and obesity and the diseases that can also be associated in Native American communities as well as other communities. It's so crucial to being able to use food as medicine. Trusting and honoring the knowledge, the wisdom, the science of indigenous cultural foods is so vital, and why returning to those traditional foods and those traditional teachings is is so powerful and so healing for our people. What we now understand that our ancestors understood is that there's benefit to letting the body kind of take a break and not always be consuming. In fact, taking a period of time when the body is ready to be resting and not taking in food and doing repair and doing detoxification is when it's best to fast. And so having a period of time at the end of the day after your evening meal, and not having your evening meal be too late, and then overnight into the morning, is a really important time where the body can reset, repair, use what you consume during the day to then heal itself, is a really important time where you're not eating, and ideally you're sleeping through a significant part of that so that the body can be doing that work to repair. And then in the morning, you eat your first food, you then break your fast, which is why it's called breakfast. And so the very first thing you eat when you're breaking fast, whether it's from overnight or it's from, you know, a prolonged fast after ceremony, I mean, we know that after ceremony, the first meal you eat, it's usually a very intentional meal. Well, similarly, when we're breaking fast in the morning, what we eat in the morning is very important because it's the first thing your body is then reintegrating. And so generally you want those meals to be not very heavy. Generally they're going to contain some protein and probably some vegetable or fruit and maybe a broth. It kind of depends, but generally those are kind of the guidelines, and that's because the broth is cooked and it makes it easy to digest what's there, and then it gives you the vitamins, the nutrients, and the protein that you need when you've gone through a fast. Protein is really important for detoxification. When you go through a fast or a cleanse, some people can get sick because they don't have enough protein, and so all you're doing is releasing toxins into the body, but you're not providing the body the protein that's an essential piece for the body to be able to detoxify and remove those through our processes, our liver, our kidney, our bladder, etc. So when I talk to patients about food as medicine, I mean, ultimately I kind of want to start where they're at and within their life, because some people are ready for this drastic change and this drastic overhaul, but most people really aren't. And most people kind of know what it is they need to do and kind of have an idea of what maybe they're not doing that's so much imbalance. And they just need some extra tools, some extra information to be able to make those right decisions. And the key pieces really are about balance. Balanced plate, balanced portion sizes, and learning how to listen and support your body. And then learning how to be a careful consumer, a conscientious consumer, and learning how to not be fooled by the food industry, learning how to read nutrition labels, learning how to know what the food is that you're taking in. And then, I mean, some of the strategies are really about just that, with tapping into your body and learning how to listen to your body. If you're feeling pain, if you're feeling fatigued, if your joints ache, if you can't get rested, if you eat and you hurt afterwards, whether it's your belly hurts afterwards or your body hurts afterwards, a lot of those things can be a sign that your food is actually not healing for you. It could be that your food is inflammatory. Too much sugar, too much fat, too much salt, too much processed can be inflammatory to the body and can trigger lots of those symptoms.